Heading out into the thunderstorm which he was warned about on one of the last emergency broadcasts, Jamie heads in the direction of Weston, in hopes of finally looting the few homes he had missed. Driving the route he had cleared countless times before, he spends the majority of the morning fighting undead off the road before he begins to see the futility of it all. Drenched and tired, he doesn't have the fight in him to push into Weston today, returning to his vehicle before he stops partway back up the road to clear even more lingering undead. As if the world itself could feel his failing composure, suddenly wave after wave of wandering shamblers come pouring from the woods in an attempt to overwhelm him. Just pulling more and more from the nearby area, true panic sets in as Jamie spots his car surrounded by the relentless pursuers, forcing him to flee into the woods once again. Finally creating a more manageable situation, Jamie listens to the larger group rustling through the trees to his north and wastes no time in fighting to his steed. Frustrated but given time to think on his way home, Jamie begins crafting the hypothesis that the undead simply migrate to the more developed parts of Knox County. They are drawn to noise, and what makes more noise than 100 rotten corpses banging around and growling non-stop? Worried about what it means if his assumption is correct, he calms himself by checking in on his garden, which appears to be flourishing despite Jamie's noticeable lack of a green thumb. Reorganizing, reading up on fishing line, and then setting to actually fishing, Jamie ends his day on a much better note than it had started, using his catch to cook up an acceptable stew in his fireplace. Waking up in the chair that had now become his bed, he sets off from his sanctuary once more, but with the intention of steering clear of any major town or city for the day. Exploring the more rural homes, his hypothesis is reinforced as Jamie barely has to deal with the undead while he searches for necessary supplies. Finding himself just south of Weston, he clears out a larger farmstead that it appears a small group had retreated to for the outbreak, clearing them out one by one so he can rest easy for the night in his temporary home. Barely noticing that it had now been a month since the outbreak, Jamie heads back into the rain once more to continue his scouting of the more peaceful farmland. As he continues to clear homes, he wonders if it will ever be possible to claim a town as entirely safe before accidentally stumbling on the southern road leading to Weston. Having his suspicions confirmed once again, he reverses his direction back away from town and starts discovering various car wrecks along the main road. Eventually, even more evidence shows itself in the form of a large herd gathered in the middle of the street, making Jamie wonder if the mindless undead float on them like a lazy river of death. Moving off the main road, he finds himself exploring what appears to have been some sort of small military camp or barracks out in the middle of nowhere. Sadly, however, it appears the only things left behind are lockers full of clothing and a handful of basic tools. Now concerned more than ever about being able to reach any sort of bookstore or school, Jamie heads home in the golden hours of the evening to try and figure out a way forward. It appears that the undead migrate towards the towns and cities, as far as I can tell, which I guess makes sense, but makes my mission a lot more difficult. Where I had assumed Weston was finally safe, each time I return there is another horde of undead waiting for me. It's like mowing the lawn at this point. It just feels so routine. I did change my direction for the day, however, exploring the farmlands away from West Point. It was almost peaceful. There were times where you could almost forget the world had gone to shit. Almost. I still need to focus on getting the power back up, but that's a problem for tomorrow. Jamie. Looking over his slowly sprawling map, Jamie prepares for another day of striking out into the rural farmland of Kentucky. Having to continually drive further and further, he still prays that he'll come across the manual for the generator that he needs, but feels the draw back to West Point in the back of his mind. Finding himself going through the motions as he loots house after house, he begins to question if this truly was the best way forward, before finding a home that feels like a slap in the face. Nothing but newspaper and dog food. Was this truly worth fighting through the undead for? Why is he out here risking his life when he could so easily be holed up in his distant sanctuary? Desperate to find something to show for his day, he explores some more and comes across a small town, though a glance at its outskirts only provide redundant supplies and roaming undead. Waking up the next day, he thinks nothing of his plans to strike out again in hopes of a miracle, but finds himself questioning the plan as he reflects quietly in the tranquility of his dock. There was nothing more out there for him, at least not at the moment. Now it was clear as ever that it was time for him to put down roots and prepare for a life in this new world. As he begins to put his mediocre carpentry skills to use, he realizes that the endless expanse of the outdoors no longer has the stranglehold it once had on him, allowing him to enjoy the chirping of birds and the bubbling of the river instead of the strangled cries of the undead. Dispatching a lone intruder that had found her way into the neighboring home, Jamie knows that constructing the gate to his yard is now necessary, otherwise a single stray could find their way to his throat while he slept. Knowing that he'll need timber and hinges, Jamie is also aware of his lacking abilities when it comes to construction, making plans to address all these needs in the coming days. Having not wielded an axe since his uncle had forced him to when he was a child, Jamie's first strikes are clumsy and weak, but his persistence sees him through. Feeling good about getting half the wall constructed, Jamie retires to the calm of his garden to read up on other skills he imagines he'll need in the coming months. Life is a strange thing, to be sure. Before all this, my biggest concern was stepping outside. Horrible beasts, diseases, fallen trees, natural disasters. I saw death around our world and comfort within the walls of civilization. Now, perhaps with the forced perspective of these shambling horrors, I've come to face the reality of my life. Nature is nothing but a resource, a tool, sometimes even a source of peace. I no longer shiver at the thought of leaving my home, though I'm finding less and less reasons to leave my sanctuary by the river. Jamie. Having his heart full of hope as he watches his home building up around him, he continues to decipher the handiwork of those who came before him, until a familiar, unwelcome guest appears. Initially feeling the spike of dread that coincides with the slapping of the helicopter's deadly blades, Jamie comes to the realization that there is no longer a need to panic. Instead, he calmly stays out of sight and finds a discarded book to pass the time. Though he's found a renewed peace in his isolation, Jamie wakes up the following morning knowing that he can't stay idle for long. Finding another source of determination to strike back into West Point, Jamie leaves his sanctuary once more in hopes that the hordes around his town have thinned. Having to fight his way through the usual amount of undead guarding his destination, he feels the relentless despair of their overwhelming numbers setting in once again. Spending half the day simply fighting to the road leading to the school, his will to go on crumbles as he spots an even larger herd shambling at the end of the neighborhood. Spying that the church was relatively clear, he makes his way inside but purposefully avoids the nearby graveyard in fear of dredging up suppressed memories. Finally accepting that there were just too many to hack through, Jamie leaves West Point as the sun begins to set, but continues to try and craft a plan to get him into the school. With the benefit of silence during his fishing at dusk, the sudden burst of flame as he strikes a match ignites an idea in Jamie's battered mind. Knowing he had to clear the blood fields yet again, Jamie's newfound resolve shows through, as he simply wraps his fingers around his pistol and squeezes off the first of many rounds. Completing the first phase of his mission, Jamie returns to the location that had been tucked away in the back of his mind, the crashed police car on the outskirts of West Point. Moderately disappointed that there was no hope in getting this car moving again, he is at least grateful that the equipment he needed appears to be functioning. Knowing that this work will require safety, he wastes no time in beginning to clear the surrounding undead as the day continues to drag on. Filled with stubborn adrenaline and morbid excitement, Jamie heads home as it begins to get dark to complete the final preparations for his fiery solution. After trying to calm down some of his nerves with a bottle of bourbon, he finds himself writing a farewell note in case his plan leads to his demise. If you find this note, then I have failed my mission to reach the school at West Point. If you're still dedicated to surviving, there is a small community just northwest on the river. There is food, supplies, shelter, and anything else you might need to keep yourself alive. I hope I can burn this after a successful mission, but just in case, Jamie. Fueled by smoldering hope, Jamie clears the immediate area around the cruiser once again, before finally putting in place the final preparations. Bursting with victory and ambition as he turns off the sirens and breathes in the air thick with smoke and death, Jamie moves to confirm the effectiveness of his new tactic by exploring the homes further down the road. Where once hordes of hundreds had roamed, now there simply lay deserted streets and open fields, everything appearing to come together as Jamie is suddenly stunned by an unexpected discovery. In a mailbox, after all this time, after all this effort, he could barely hold back tears of fury and elation as the knowledge he needed was finally in his grasp. Whether it was a cruel joke or another sign of good things to come, he finds another copy in the house that leaves him truly speechless for the journey home. I'm filled with both joy and despair on this tremendous day. The pamphlet that I needed, the knowledge to get the power back on, it was so close for so long. If I had only checked 2 more houses down the road, then there never would have been any reason to press towards the school. How many did I kill in pursuit of this essential knowledge? I suppose it's all worth it now. I'm going to resume broadcasting on the radio each morning again. Hopefully there are others like me out there. Jamie. This is Jamie Nichols. I've managed to get the power back on, and I will be broadcasting around this time every morning. If you can hear me, I implore you, please hail me on this frequency. I can provide food, shelter, and sanctuary. If you are still a survivor in Knox County, I can help. I will help. Harvesting his first crop from his modest garden and smiling at the low drone of his working refrigerator once more, Jamie gets to work on planting his next crop and constructing a composter for all the fresh food that had previously rotted during the outage. Finding an intoxicating level of peace as he basks in the fruit of his labor, Jamie's immediate goals turn inwards for the first time since his struggle for survival had begun. He was safe, he was well fed, he was well supplied, and the slice of heaven he had found began to sink its lethargic claws into him. Finding himself struggling to sleep, a restless uneasiness constantly raking at the back of his mind, Jamie takes advantage of having power once again, and distracts himself with VHS and an early morning workout before deciding to head out for the day. Telling himself that he needed just a few more various comforts for his new home, he knew that he was only lying to himself. The truth was that even peace and safety made him uneasy. Driving to the nearby home under construction, he spends the majority of the day collecting more materials for his own projects, finding himself content and feeling productive beneath the battering rain. On his way home, he makes another stop to collect some furniture, already aware that his storage means was severely lacking for the coming winter. Attacking his home with a fresh vision, he addresses the long-neglected space with a bit more planning and forethought, truly turning his house into a home over the next several days. I guess it's fitting that this is the last page of this notebook. I feel like I've finally earned the right to breathe freely again, and have scraped back some semblance of normal in this horrific world. The past few days have been the most peaceful and unproductive days since this nightmare began, and it was genuinely cleansing to be so sluggish and lazy for once. I still find myself asking if this is a life worth living, if I'm the only one left. Is it really worth pushing through day after day if humanity dies off with me? Would be a rather bleak ending for the human race. Jamie. Staving off the lingering feeling of pointless survival, Jamie spends the early hours of the morning preparing for another assault on Weston. If he can fully clear the small town of undead, then the singular gas pump could provide his generator with enough fuel for the entire winter. Forced to take it slow and methodical, Jamie guns down the larger horde on the outskirts, while hoping to draw any stragglers out of the nearby woods. Clearing the road he knew like the back of his hand, he reaches the abandoned police truck that was a minor goal for his trip. Having read through the basics and watched a rather dodgy VHS on hot wiring, Jamie proves his inexperience over and over again as he clumsily fights with the ignition. Finally getting a spark of success, Jamie uses his sore fingers to check the empty gas tank before finally getting the well-maintained engine to roar. Scouting on foot into Weston for his coming plans, Jamie finds a singular zombie trapped in a wood shed behind the convenience store. Part of him instinctually wants to free and dispose of the shambling creature, but a darker side of the now bloody survivor takes weak revenge by leaving her prisoner. Starting to tow his original SUV home, Jamie realizes he's losing the light and decides to leave the tedious drive for another day. Feeling the seeds of worry as he spots a handful of zombies on his road, he wonders if his constant trips in and out are drawing the strays from West Point. Spending the early morning fishing with the knowledge that he's going back to Weston today, Jamie begins to come to terms with a new routine of his life: eat, sleep, kill, and survive. Finding that his police training is fully returned to him in regards to his sidearm, Jamie appreciates and fears the lack of emotion he feels as he uses these husks of people for target practice. Picking up more containers from the beautiful homes besides the river, Jamie finally makes his way back to the clearing he had fled all those days ago. Returning home both bloody and with the supplies he needs, Jamie washes the filth from his shrinking figure and gets to work organizing and preparing for tomorrow's hard labor. Poring over one of his books on welding and metalworking, Jamie begins the slow and arduous process of procuring a new skill in this harsh world. Filling his belly and double-checking his guide one last time, he finally sets off for Weston with the goal of clearing the road, but not of the undead. Testing out his untrained hand on the wrecks just outside the drug lab, he finds that it's much easier to tear something apart than he realized, cutting each burned husk into large sheets that he could feasibly use down the road. Beginning work on the first real roadblock, Jamie's focus lasers in as the sun rises higher and higher in the surprisingly clear sky. Cutting through the final stretch, every card becomes quicker and quicker to dismantle, but Jamie can't deny the painful ache that comes with a hard day's work. Confident enough to claim the gas pump in Weston for his own, Jamie hops back into his new SUV in the setting sun, smiling with pride as he cruises down the now empty streets. Only able to feed himself before collapsing into bed from exhaustion, Jamie wakes up the next day with a welcome warmth of hope in his heart. Knowing that all he needed to turn that singular pulse of hope into a roaring flame was companionship, he moves to act on an idea he'd been putting off for far too long. While he wasn't going to give up hope on his radio broadcasts, he acknowledges that not everyone is perhaps as lucky as himself. If they were without electricity, or even on the run, a clear sign on the main road could be the trick to guiding survivors to his sanctuary. Praying that he truly wasn't the only one left alive, he convinces himself that he would need more beds and furniture if a friend ever did stumble into his life. I perhaps am asking for trouble by simply putting this to paper, but it feels as though a turning of the tide has occurred. Weston has been reclaimed. My home is becoming more and more developed by the day, and the fear of the undead is turning into a mild annoyance. I didn't think about it, but the last few days I forgot my bulletproof vest by the door, along with my helmet. Maybe the worst of this is over. Maybe now is the beginning of rebuilding. Jamie.